wonder whether you are an introvert. Hey there, I'm Danielle Zapchenk, and I am so thankful you are joining me today on the Parable Podcast. I'd love for you to meet my guest, professional speaker and massage therapist, Sabrina Schottenhammel. Sabrina shares about her tendency to hide and her journey to overcome that mindset.
If you're in a meeting, the extroverts are usually the ones that are speaking up. But if we can really stand in our quiet power and express ourselves even before the meeting and say, okay, I might not speak up during the meeting because I want to take some time to really formulate my thoughts instead of just like blurting something out. Because it takes me time to take notes and then really formulate that response. So it's very thoughtful.
Here's my conversation with Sabrina Schottenhammel. Thrilled to introduce you to my friend Sabrina. Sabrina and I met through the Baton Pass. I know you've heard many episodes from them. But Sabrina, I'm so glad just to have some time to get to know you better today and hear more of your story. So welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Danielle.
So Sabrina, what would you say if you could just like look at the entirety of your life? What is something that you are really passionate about?
That's a very good question. Obviously, it's changed over my lifetime, but over the last 5 to 7, maybe even 10 years, it's been really focused on self-care. When I started implementing self-care into my daily life as a massage therapist, I knew I wanted to do massage for many, many years, and I was starting to feel burnout. And so I took a step back and I was like, okay, what can I do to take care of myself? And self-care just started coming into my life, getting massages again and just really taking care of myself physically, but also mentally too. So I started implementing simple self-care into my life, which is taking mini breaks. So 1 to 5 minutes of just stepping back to relax, to center, to calm, to pray, to go out for a walk, whatever it might be. It really just helped me to finish one session off really well, clear my mind, and then go into the next session with purpose and clarity and energy too. Because obviously as a massage therapist or even for my professional speaking, I want to be at my best for everything that I do. So taking the time to practice the self-care in between each and every appointment or speaking engagement or massage is really been key for me over the past I would say probably 10 years.
What would you say as you were kind of into that journey and starting like practicing that more? What would be one of the best thoughts that somebody had given you throughout that process?
Put it on your calendar. Because if you don't put it on your calendar, you don't do it. And even sometimes when you do put it on your calendar, you kind of skip over it, especially when it's just an appointment with yourself. But it's really important to put it on your calendar and then even put maybe a couple different activities that you could incorporate into that mini break. That way, if you don't have time to go out for a walk, you can sit and pray for 5 minutes, or you have a few different options of just centering yourself and grounding.
Well, before you got into massage therapy, what would you say was your first job that you ever had?
My very first job was babysitting.
Okay. Do you remember that family? Was it a hard family? Was it super easy?
I don't remember the very first family. I remember several families in particular. And what I remember about babysitting versus going to get a job was I didn't want to interact with lots of people because as a shy, anxious introvert, I didn't want to be out there talking to people. So I thought it was safe to go meet with the parents. And then when they hired me, obviously I would show up on time. They would give me a little rundown of what's to come and what time they are leaving and what time they're coming back and all that. But it was sort of like a good place for me to start because I was able to hide. And, kids are very honest and they judge and stuff, but I didn't have to put myself out there in public.
Oh my gosh. I never even thought about, I would say I have extrovert tendencies, but I also do like being by myself. So there's this, I understand those thought processes and feelings of being an introvert. You talked about being shy and anxious. Is that something that you still struggle with? Is that something that you've learned about yourself and how to build these skills?
Yes. I was held back in first grade, and I don't remember anyone telling me that I was stupid or not good enough, but I wore a label for many years that said I am stupid. So not only did the school system hold me back, but then I held myself back because I didn't answer or I didn't ask questions. I didn't raise my hand in class because I didn't even want to come off as stupid because I didn't know what was going on. So yeah, I fell way behind. So that made me shy. And I didn't find out that I was an actual introvert until a few years ago when my business coach and I were talking, and she said, you know, I feel like maybe you're not an introvert anymore all the time. Because like you, we have those introverted tendencies where we like to be alone to recharge our batteries. And I think that's where the simple self-care comes in too. But shyness and being an introvert are not the same thing. So extroverts can be shy at certain times too. So the reason I say I was shy and an anxious introvert is because I overthought everything. So if I'd have to do something new or speak up or whatever, I would have all those anxious thoughts. I would start sweating and my face would turn red if I had to speak in front of people or answer questions. It was very internal, but it was like an internal fight that was horrible. Like it never felt well.
That's a good way to think about it. Like how, even though you said you weren't shy anymore, there's still those tendencies. And I think that's so true for many of us. There's certain characteristics about ourselves that just become so natural that we don't realize, even if have we grown, it's still a part of our life.
Yeah.
If you could go back and look at like one moment of your life to either relive it or really to, you kind of remember it, but you'd love more like pieces of that memory, is there something that stands out to you?
Well, when I think about being young and shy, on the other aspect, I was a dancer and I loved expressing myself through the art of dance. I absolutely loved performing in front of hundreds of people. I loved taking classes. I loved learning different dances and then practicing and then either performing, or we did a lot of competitions. I mean, that was like one thing that I would love to go back to, and not the competition part of it, but just taking dance classes together with other dancers, whatever form of dance it might be, but just to have that camaraderie of, you know, like-mindedness in dance and being able to express yourself through movement and the art of dance. I haven't done like a dance class in, it's probably like almost 5 years now. And I'm really missing that. So I would really love to get back to a dance class.
That's cool. I love that. There was a woman a couple years ago I met, and she was taking ballet lessons. And I was like, what? Not that I didn't assume that people didn't continue to dance, but you just are like, oh, that's for little kids. And then once you're out of a certain age range, you have things to do with your life. But I mean, even with like those little simple self-care things, if that is something that you just like need for all of us, like realizing, oh, wow, like I love this as a kid. Why don't I still do it now? Just something to think about. Well, Sabrina, this podcast is really about people's stories and just for us to take the time to recognize, oh, wow, maybe I didn't see it in this moment, but looking back now, I can see that there's this parable through line of where God has walked alongside me, and this is the lesson that I've learned. So, Sabrina, I'd love for you to share with us what your parable story is.
Obviously, we have lots and lots of stories, and part of my story is overcoming and persevering through being shy, you know, working on steps to overcome that shyness, and then, you know, having my own business and having to network and speak to people, and then joining Toastmasters. That was a huge step in my life that helped me to grow. Because if I didn't hear about Toastmasters and public speaking and even like the drive inside of me that wanted something more, because as a massage therapist, I can only reach one person at a time. And I felt like I needed to do something more to reach a bigger number of people. And when I kept hearing about public speaking and Toastmasters, I was like, okay, well, that could work, but I was deathly afraid of speaking in front of people. So when I first found out about Toastmasters, there was a club literally in walking distance from my house. But from the time I found out to the time I actually went to the meeting was probably over a year. But once I went to the meeting and I participated, something clicked inside of me. I knew at that moment public speaking was something I had to do for the rest of my life. And I really did well. I just threw myself into it, and I was creating speeches and receiving feedback and improving upon each presentation every time. And just, feeling supported by my peers. And that really helped me to grow not only as a person in my personal life, but in my professional life too. I could just see things growing and expanding for myself.
You had mentioned this was a step of overcoming. How was God a part of this journey for you? Was this something you're like, God, I'm really struggling with this, and you're having you're just deep moments of prayer and frustration? Or was it like afterwards you're like, oh, this is how this happened and this played out, and I can see your hand at work?
I have to say that through a lot of my life, I was raised Protestant, going to church, and then in middle school, we stopped going to church, and I still would technically pray, but I wasn't as close to Jesus as I am now. So looking back, I can see that he was pushing me in certain areas of my life, because there was a couple things that I've found, memories that I've found over the years. One of them was, it was write down 3 things that you want to be when you grow up. And one was be an entrepreneur or have my own business. The second one was be married to an amazing man and and have kids. Well, I got 2 out of the 3. I don't have any kids, which is fine. But in all of that, it's he was speaking to me back then, but I was too afraid to explore those things. So now, obviously as a speaker and entrepreneur and just looking back, I'm like, oh, okay, I see, he was just encouraging me, even through my pastor when I was going through confirmation. I think in the Bible that he gave me as a gift, he wrote a really encouraging note in there that said, I believe in you. He believed in me when I did not believe in myself. So, it's not only did God put people into my life, but he showed me the messages and the steps along the way.
Many of us can resonate with the idea of being afraid to explore because we don't like the unknown. For me, what if I fail? And just well, what is the next step? And so when you said, being afraid to explore these opportunities, what was that tension like for you of choosing to walk just down the block to Toastmasters, or even just choosing to be okay, I'm going to just step out a little bit? What was that like for you?
Oh, it was super scary. It still is scary. You get an idea to post something on social media, or I like to do videos and post them. And I get these ideas, and sometimes I act on them and I post them. And other times I hide. That's my tendency, is to hide and to just keep it to myself. But then I realized that it's not helping anyone when I hide. And God's purpose for me is to share. And that's why he held me back in first grade. And that's why I had so many struggles. So I could really help people now overcome and realize that it's okay to struggle and to hide, but don't do it all the time.
For somebody who is wanting to take a next step, or maybe even just thinking about a new opportunity, what would be your encouragement to them? Because either they are afraid or they're I don't know if this is really my time.
Well, obviously, we're supposed to go to God in prayer first. So that is number one of what I would say. And then second is finding your community of people that really encourage you. So, if you have an idea or something, you're oh, I really feel like this is something I need to do. Obviously, bring it to God in prayer. And then next, when you sit with it, you journal about it, and then you can go to your friends and your trusted, whoever it might be, friends, fellow entrepreneurs, whatever, and bring that up to them so that they can give you another side of it. Because as entrepreneurs, we're sort of in our thoughts alone. And we're working on this alone. Well, not alone, but with God. But we feel like we're alone sometimes. And if we can just ask for help, we can lay it out there. Sometimes we can get another perspective. And then once that is out of your mind, and then you can organize it with your friends, it doesn't seem so scary anymore. Taking the means to to pray, to ask for help, and then just organize your thoughts so that you can just move forward with it.
Sabrina, this month on the Parable Podcast, we're focusing on community building relationships. And, with this idea of you wanting to hide, did that go into having relationships with other people, at least deepening them, just because that was holding you back from that opportunity? And if so, how did you kind of change that mindset for yourself?
So I've always had pretty good relationships, but I feel like I do still hold back from being my true self in relationships. It's never really harmed me, thankfully, in my, friendships or even my family relationships. Growing in my community, well, for one, asking for help, that was a huge thing for me because I was afraid to come off as stupid because as a child, that's what I thought I was. So once I started realizing that it's okay to ask for help, that changed everything. I have a supportive community that I'm in a couple times a week, and we have a mastermind that we meet every Friday, and we talk about things that we need support with. And it's just been amazing to, be held accountable, but yet get that support of when I do need help. And then I've created my own community for introverts over the last just over 3 years now, Networking for Introverts. We meet once a month over Zoom, and I created a safe space for us to come together and learn together. And I sometimes will bring in some guest speakers, and we just have nice conversations. We have a topic, I share something, or the guest speaker shares something, and then we have a discussion. So once I realized that I found my community, I realized I wanted to create that community for others. And the introverts are someone I can relate to and really share my experience over my years with them.
Yeah, I love that for you, Sabrina. I think that's so awesome. What would you say as you have built this community and learned about yourself more? What is maybe one of the most misunderstood things about being an introvert?
That we are ignorant or that we're too afraid to speak up. And we need to use our introvert strengths instead of thinking of them as challenges. Because if you're in a meeting, whether it's on Zoom or in person, the extroverts are usually the ones that are speaking up. But if we can really stand in our quiet power and express ourselves even before the meeting and say, okay, I might not speak up during the meeting because I want to take some time to really formulate my thoughts instead of just blurting something out, because it takes me time to take notes and then really formulate that response. So it's very thoughtful.
In the beginning, when we started you sharing your parable, you said the word overcomer. How long did it take you to figure out that is the word for you? And realize that, you have overcome something. I mean, we could go through so many different stories of our life. And for me, sometimes I look at other people's stories and I'm like, oh, I didn't have this happen to me or this happened to me. But I mean, there are all these pieces, whether we realize it or not, that we truly have overcome. And so what was that journey like for you?
I don't think I realized how far I've come until I started sharing my story about how shy I was and how reserved I was, afraid to speak up. And then once I became a Toastmaster and started talking to people and became a professional speaker and actually getting paid for speaking to people, people or whoever I was talking to would say, wow, that you've really come a long way. And I guess, like you just said, Danielle, you don't realize that you have a story, a big story. And when we're in that story, we don't realize how far we have come, overcome, or the other word I really like is persevere, because I have persevered over the years. And yes, I overcame that shyness, but then I persevered through wanting to hide and okay, I do hide one day and then I step out the next and it's not so bad. I'm still here. it's because of the feedback I've received that I realized like, oh, wow, I have come a long way in my life.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that having that community, having someone to provide that feedback, because when we are just like plugging along, we don't take the moment to reflect or to look back and see, oh, these were my goals or my thoughts or my dreams. But like, look at the improvement or just like the direction of where I've ended up. And to be able to really celebrate that. So when you talked about having those like simple, like 5 minutes just to reset, you know, if you were in a hard situation or there was something awkward that happened or just like annoying, like having those 5 minutes to be like, oh, okay, like, but here's what I did instead. Sabrina, if we go back to self-care for a second, you know, you talked about desire to be a massage therapist. Why do you think like this is just so important? And why do people usually skip over this in their day-to-day?
When people think of self-care, they think of getting a massage, getting their hair done, their nails, manicure, pedicure. And those are big investments of time and resources. So people say, oh, I don't have time for that because, who does have time or resources to do that every single day? No. But if you can reframe it, and think of the little things you can do to refresh your mind, body, and soul and spirit, then you can take those 1 to 5 minutes. Because if you take 1 minute here and 5 minutes here and, 5 more minutes here, that's 11 minutes that you've done over the course of the day. That is self-care. And even just putting that onto your calendar and practicing it day after day, you can really add up the moments of self-care. So it could add up to an hour, but you're not taking the time to go out and get a massage and pay for that. You're just doing the little things that really charge you up.
Yeah. Sabrina, as we are wrapping up, when you think about your story, have you seen like a couple moments of faithfulness that God has just really provided in your life that you can just remember and be like, oh, wow, like I saw you in this moment, whether that was through, overcoming or persevering or moments of hiding where he really showed up?
Well, I remember when I started getting curious about finding Jesus once again, or just really longing for that relationship with Jesus. I remember being at a meeting, and it was not just like one meeting. It was meetings over the course of 6 months or whatever. And it was my speaker community. And at the end, we always do gratitude. And so people would stand up and say, God did this for me. And without God, I wouldn't be here or whatever. And he just kept sprinkling those messages into my life. And then he would put people in my life that were Christian and that had so much faith. And I just saw, like, I would hear their stories or I would just see something unique in them. And I knew that I needed to just get closer to God and really step into faith. Because like I said, I never really lost my faith, but I stopped going to church and I was praying, but it wasn't the same as it is today. I really feel close and connected to God now. More than ever in my life.
Sabrina, I think what you're sharing there is that faith is a journey. It is a learning process. It is a learning curve sometimes where we are taking these moments, we're figuring how God has wired us. And are we choosing to say yes to, 5 minutes of simple self-care? Are we praying? Are we like saying yes to walking into Toastmasters? Like there's so many like pieces where he is constantly growing us. And I just appreciate you sharing your parable story and how you've seen God work through it all. And as you're an overcomer. Sabrina, if people wanted to connect with you or find out more about all the things that you're doing, how can they do that?
Yes, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. Okay. So I will give you that link so you can share it. Yeah, I'm on Facebook a little bit, but LinkedIn is the place that I spend most of my time because it's a professional network.
Well, all of Sabrina's information will be in today's show notes. Sabrina, thank you so much for being on the Parable Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Whether you fall into the category of introvert or extrovert, we need you all. We all have a tendency to hide parts of ourselves. And like Sabrina, are we willing to not hold back anymore? To connect with her, simply visit DanielleZapchenk.com for details. Hey, if this episode really made an impact on you, could you do me a favor? Would you share this episode in your story this week on Instagram or Facebook, or maybe even text a link to your friend who would be encouraged by this episode? I would greatly appreciate it. And here are 2 reflection questions from our time together today. Number 1, how can you reframe self-care for yourself in this season of your life? And what is just one simple next step? Number 2, what is your own story of overcoming that you want to remember today? This episode was edited by my husband, Eric Zapchenk, and we hope you were encouraged to think about your own parable story. Remember, your parable showcases how God uses your shyness as a way to draw closer to Him. We'll see you back again next week on the Parable Podcast.